The airlines in this edition: politically motivated pressures and intensive lobbying persistently harassing Ethiopia. And Africans are calling for permanent representation at the United Nations Security Council. Hello and welcome to this news hour. I'm Daniel Kasahun with the news. Ethiopia has asked the UNESCO and the WHO to expose the truth about TPLF-led destructions in Amhara and Afar region. The Director General for International Organizations at the Ethiopian Minister of Foreign Affairs, Yosef Kasai, held a discussion about the matter with representatives from UNESCO and WHO. During the discussions, the Director General expressed the concerns of the government of Ethiopia over the reluctance of these agencies in revealing the damage caused by the TPLF terrorist group in Tigray, Amhara and therefore regional states on the country's cultural heritage and health facilities. The destruction and looting of properties, including economic, social and cultural assets by the TPLF, have been a source of serious concern, said the Director General, adding that the failure by the international community to condemn these terrorist acts emboldened TPLF to cause further plunder and damage. He also said that Ethiopia, as a founding member of the United Nations, has long-standing relations with all agencies of the organization and thus expects these agencies to undertake their activities impartially and speak out publicly about the destructions caused by the terrorist group. The head of the two organizations have pledged to take Ethiopia's concerns seriously, given their primary responsibilities in protecting cultural sites and the well-being of the people of Ethiopia. This is according to the Minister of Foreign Affairs. The spokesperson of the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ethiopia, Ambassador Dina Mutis, says Ethiopians and Ethiopians' friends are engaged in moral, financial and other diplomatic activities supporting the sweeping reforms being undertaken across the nation. In the press briefing held yesterday, Dina added that the hashtag No More movement in various countries has also been strengthened. The spokesperson has disclosed that double standard is still being observed by some international media and Western countries about the historical size destruction, million starvation and the IDPs in Amhara and the Afar region. The Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ethiopia has in addition gripped the decision of the United Nations Human Rights Council in Geneva to set a special session on Ethiopia on Friday. The ministry believes that it is a politically motivated move that deliberately ignored the Ethiopian government's commitment that welcomed the findings of the United Nations Ethiopian Human Rights Commission joint investigation report and established a high-level inter-ministerial task force to implement the recommendations therein. The UNESCO remained unperturbed and buried its head in the sand when Lalibela discredited, Redwan Hussein tweeted. The political and economic diplomacy state minister added that the WHO is dead for two apparent reasons: when thousands of health facilities ransacked, EU seems busy contriving resolution against Ethiopia in Geneva. Time for prowess from Friends of Ethiopia, he has tweeted. You are watching live transmission of this news hour. African leaders are elevating the issue of permanent seat for the continent at the United Nations Security Council to a top agenda. The much coveted and decisive permanent seat helps the continent float its agenda to the floors of the global body. It also helps effectively stop undue arm twisting and third-party intervention by those in the West with veto power. Let's take a look.
Today's UN is dominated by non-democracies for non-democracies. Of course it's failing. Your challenge: design the right multilateral institution for the 21st century. Thank you.
This is a 2017 remark at the Oxford University by Professor Anne Bayefsky, an international lawyer, scholar and human rights as well as equality activist. The fact that the UN is a failing system is not the sole view of Professor Bayefsky, but many, particularly in the global south, share this view. For instance, while Ethiopia is an African state and a co-founder of League of Nations, it was mistreated at the League this way back in 1937, when Italy committed an aggression on sovereign soil and Emperor Haile Selassie cried foul.
In the shadows of the press gallery, Italian newspapermen are ready for an outbreak against the emperor whose country their country has taken, waiting for his first word.
Monsieur le Président, Monsieur le...
Trying to quell the disturbance, lights turned out. Again, lights out. The disturbers ejected, arrested, and he is able to make his appeal.
Although the UN Charter was designed for a fair and equal treatment of its member states, some are receiving absolutely unfair treatment and misrepresentations at the global giant, the United Nations. History illustrates this with its great records of how the UN is accommodating unilateralism, as the US invaded Iraq in 2007, imposed 60-year blockade against Cuba, caused over 30,000 deaths in Venezuela between 2017 and 2018, caused this era's greatest sufferings and destruction in Syria, Libya, Somalia, Afghanistan, Sudan, Ethiopia, and in many other countries in the global south. This hegemony of unilateralism in the UN system by certain superpowers in the global system is a proof that the UN is a failing system, and that is why many African leaders have been asking for the permanent representation of the continent at the UN Security Council. In 2016, addressing the 26th African Union Summit, late Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe resonated the same idea. He called for a reformed UN Security Council.
The bosses in the Security Council say you shall never have the powers that we have as permanent members. And we have asked and asked and asked and asked and asked. Reform the Security Council.
Mugabe also recommended that African states be treated equally at the UN as a denominator for its survival.
If the United Nations is to survive, we must be equal members of it.
And lately, many African states have echoed the continent's strong desire to have equal and functional representation at the UN Security Council.
On the 75th anniversary of the UN, we repeat our call for greater representation of African countries on the Security Council, and that this be taken up with urgency at the intergovernmental negotiations. It is only through a reformed and inclusive UN Security Council that we will be able to collectively resolve some of the world's most protracted conflicts.
Nigeria supports the expansion of the United Nations Security Council to reflect the diversity and dynamics of the 21st century. Africa deserves permanent seats in the United Nations Security Council.
How about a little bit of satire comedy now? Alongside the propaganda battle against the US-led imperialist war of aggression and Western media bias, some Ethiopians have come up with powerful satire comedy. The following piece is a funny depiction and all shot in Addis Ababa by the famous Jimmy Shaw. Let's take a look.
Breaking news, and now the headlines. The rebels have hijacked one of the Ethiopian Airlines planes and have crushed it right into the African Union building you see behind me. The birthplace for the Pan-Africanism has become the place for the rebels' terrorism. The rebels are not paying me enough. So far, there are no survivors. Eyewitnesses testify the situation was so chaotic. They have seen His Majesty Haile Selassie's statue running for his life. This is surely the African version of September 9/11. The next step is expected to be the invasion of Ethiopia, just like Afghanistan, to once and for all stop this terrorism. On the other hand, the Chinese are furious. They are saying all this hard work, the African Union building, for nothing. Finally, before the Chinese evacuated, they said, "We love Ethiopians and Africans, but there is no free lunch or rice. Africa cannot even pay us in big supply of mice." BBC News, propagating lies and information to neo-colonize the next nation. BBC News, running out of lies, spies and rebel ties. Stay tuned and get screwed.
That's really incredible. The TPLF cliques seem to leave a trail of destruction wherever they go. The looting and vandalizing of Wollo University in the Amhara region is the latest case in point. The graduation salon, assembly hall and students' dining rooms of the university have totally been demolished by the TPLF gangs in the region. Hatam Ashagri has the following account.
It is very difficult to even believe your eyes seeing these massive destruction and massive looting practices, which are in clear violation of the international law committed by the TPLF cliques in Amhara region. The terrorist TPLF has demolished and looted all ICT infrastructure facilities of Wollo University in the region. Talking to TV, President of Wollo University, Mangasha Ayala, said the TPLF gangs are leaving a trail of destruction and looting at the university.
የተለያዩ ቢልዲንጎቻችንን ቢሮዎቻችንን በተለይ ደግሞ በብዙ ሚሊዮን 200-300 ሚሊዮን ብር አውጥተን የገነባነውን
The TPLF cliques have demolished and looted various buildings and offices in Wollo University. They have also destroyed and looted ICT infrastructure facilities worth 300 million baht. The TPLF mafias have also disposed of expensive materials when they fail to transport them into Tigray region. Our research laboratories and engineering workshops are seriously looted and damaged in our different campuses. In general, all our learning materials have been demolished by TPLF mafias, and recently destructed materials are valued at 16 billion baht.
ብዙ ሀብት የሚጠይቁ ናቸው። ስለዚህ ዩኒቨርሲቲያችን ከውጭ ሀገር ድረስ
The TPLF cliques have demolished and looted universities and higher institutions against the international law. But some Westerners and Europeans are not ready to condemn these devilish acts committed by TPLF.
Today, Ethiopia is making significant strides in transforming its political, social, and economic landscape.
ኢትዮጵያና ሕዝቦቿን ይባርክ። አመሰግናለሁ። የሆነው ቢከብደንም አልፈናል ግድ ለማሁን የኋላን ወደ ኋላ ጥለን እንጀምር
Ethiopians in the diaspora possess an extraordinary amount of goodwill, resources, and skill sets to help our country tackle the broad range of social, economic, and political problems we face today. And please don't forget that we need you. Every single Ethiopian is deserving and is worthy of a great education, access to clean water, and living a life without poverty. Remember about the people on the other side of our giving.
All time.
Welcome back. You're watching at this news hour. An international campaign involving Ethiopians and Eritreans living in several parts of the world is underway with a view to getting Dr. Tedros Adhanom removed from his post as Director General of the World Health Organization (WHO). Coordinators of the campaign said Tedros Adhanom is covering up the atrocities against civilians and vandalism committed by the terrorist TPLF on hospitals and other health facilities in Ethiopia, misusing his position as an international organization (WHO). Democracy experts are also arguing in favor of this, asserting that he must be held accountable for his involvement in crimes against humanity.
As senior foreign advisor, I was well aware of the role of Tedros Adhanom in crimes against humanity committed by the Ethiopian government, in particular after 2012, when he became the third highest official in the government, as well as a member of the executive committee or the Politburo. And from 2012 to 2016, he was in a position of what is called senior or command responsibility, meaning that he had at least partial control over security forces and civil servants who were carrying out these crimes against humanity. And I also saw that during these years, he had involved himself in attempts to cover up several mass disasters in Ethiopia. He had tried to cover up a famine. He tried to cover up the failure of the poverty programs. He tried to cover up a massacre. He tried to cover up the arrest of journalists.
Colorful Cape Town is one of the most multiracial cities in the world. The city sits on South Africa's Cape Peninsula, where the waters of the Atlantic and Indian Oceans converge, and spectacular mountains tumble towards the sea. For decades, Cape Town has been buffeted too by the crosswinds of social upheaval. But just like those early ships, Cape Town had endured some of history's most turbulent waters and set course to an optimistic future. Cape Town's central area is situated in the City Bowl. This amphitheater-shaped area begins at the edge of Table Bay and is backed by the iconic 2-mile-long plateau of Table Mountain. Post-apartheid South Africa is often called the Rainbow Nation, and like a pot of gold at the end of that rainbow, diversity, transformation, and creativity shines out from the city's downtown streets, from its businesses, from its very walls. So come and savor the colors, hope and freedom of Cape Town.
And finally, Sudanese police fired tear gas canisters to disperse hundreds of protesters who gathered outside the presidential palace in Khartoum to demand civilian rule, witness said. Many Sudanese opposed to military rule regularly demonstrated to denounce the coup d'etat led on October 25th by the head of the army, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, and to demand the handover of power to civilians. According to witnesses, demonstrators were also marching in the eastern state of Kassala and Gadaref. Since the October 25th coup, over 40 protesters have been killed and hundreds injured, including by bullets, according to the pro-democracy Doctors Union. On that day, General Burhan has most of the civilians who were running the country with him arrested, as reported by Africa News. Just a reminder of the headlines of this news. Politically motivated pressures and intensive lobbying potentially harassing Ethiopia. And Africans calling for permanent representation at the United Nations Security Council. That's all for this edition. Thank you for watching. Goodbye and stay safe.